Welcome to Wheels Off, a show about the messy reality of the creative life. I'm Rhett Miller.
That's when it got wheels off. We started up and we ain't gonna stop. Oh, I said I liked you, I could have not. That's when it got wheels off.
Alexis Krauss of the rock duo Sleigh Bells. I've heard them described as a noise pop duo, Sleigh Bells. These kind of labels get a little tricky for me. Man, she's so great. The band is great as well. I was familiar with them before I realized that she lives in my hood in the Hudson Valley. And she's right around the corner from me. I'm out on tour right now, so we didn't get together in real life, rather via the magic of unstable internet connections. And she submitted to the Wheels Off treatment, and you guys are all the better for it because Alexis Krauss has a lot of great thoughts. She has a great perspective on stuff. Her system of making music with Derek is super interesting to me. Her whole creative process is very interesting. In fact, her path is fascinating. I didn't bring it up during the interview because it's not about me, but it reminded me in some ways of my own. We both started out as very young performers and kind of figured out what this job was before we figured out what this world was, what this life was. So it's a weird way to back into a life in art, being sort of, well, these are my words, not hers, but being sort of traumatized by it as a young person and then figuring out as an adult how to do it. So I was really grateful to get to spend this time with her. And I think you're going to get a lot out of this interview. And if you're not familiar with Sleigh Bells, you'll be grateful that you learned about the band as well. So please enjoy the newest episode of Wheels Off featuring Alexis Krauss from Sleigh Bells. Welcome to Wheels Off, Alexis Krauss. Thank you so much for joining me. How are you?
I am doing well. I'm a little scattered and all over the place at this moment. I'm not going to lie, but all things considered, I'm doing well.
I love it. And, full disclosure, you and I both live in the same small town in the Hudson Valley. I'm not there right now, but I think you are not to get people stalking us, but it's great, right? What are the odds?
Very serendipitous. And yes, I love where I live. I feel super grateful to be here. Happy to talk about all local Hudson Valley things and share the beauty of this area.
Maybe we'll do like a bonus podcast talking about Dry Fly and Full Circle and Ligustas and all that stuff. But for the moment, let's keep it to rock and roll creative stuff, I guess, for our listeners. So what are you working on right now and how does it light you up?
Oh, great question. Well, the musician part of my identity is currently working on new music with my bandmate Derek Miller. I am one half of the band Sleigh Bells, and my goodness, we are going on year 17 of being a band. We met in 2008, so I don't know, do the math. Is that even correct? We've been a band what feels like for a really long time now, and we are working on a new album, which for us is pretty informal. Derek lives not far from me up in Kingston, New York, so it right now looks like weekly writing and recording sessions in person, and currently building up material, and in that process, which I'm sure you know very intimately, of like being like, is this it? Is this going to make the record? Like, what is the record going to be? It's just like a beautiful, messy stage of just like ideation and throwing all the ideas at the wall and seeing what sticks.
So you guys write everything very collaboratively.
We do. Yeah, we do now. Our process has changed over the course of our band, but what it looks like now is Derek working on an instrumental. So Derek is a guitarist and a multi-instrumentalist and a producer, and he will share a track and some lyrics with me, and then I will kind of take the lyrics and add and subtract, and then basically write and arrange a vocal to that instrumental. And then it normally looks like me recording something at home in a very just like raw demo form, sending it back to him, and then us meeting in person and really just like getting, super detailed about what parts we want to keep. We've been doing more like in the room writing together, which has been fun, like just actually coming up with things on the spot. But yeah, that's what the process looks like. And then we live with our demos for a really long time. So like we'll kind of live with something, and then over the months we'll be like, actually, we need to rewrite that section, or let's revisit this. I think we could make it stronger. So that's a little synopsis of what we do.
When it comes time to make the record proper, have you already got a bunch of tracks that you're going to keep and turn into something? Or do you, okay. So it's the modern approach rather than book out Electric Ladyland for 3 weeks or whatever.
Yeah. So I mean, we've done it all different ways over the course of our career, but the way that's working best for us and what we've done with the past few records is um, kind of getting everything to like the best possible version of what we can make it, and then doing some booking vocal sessions with an engineer. We've actually been working at a local studio called Welterweight, which has been really fantastic with our buddy Ryan. And so then kind of like re-recording all the vocals, and then doing mixing sessions with Andrew Dawson, who's out west. Um, yeah, like really kind of, doing the most of the work in Derek's living room.
Yeah, because you can.
Over many months. Because you can, yeah. And, and our band has really, the way we record our albums, we've really never, we've done recorded some musicians in kind of like live studio spaces, but it's a lot of plugins, it's a lot of different stuff happening on the computer. And so, we're not renting like big live rooms and recording it that way.
Is Welterweight up in Kingston?
No, Welterweight is, oh gosh, I think it's technically in Marlborough.
Okay.
He just relocated from New Paltz to Marlborough, but he's like 20 minutes away from me. It's beautiful.
I love it. I feel like our region, the Hudson Valley, specifically New Paltz, Kingston, that area, our area has gotten really, a lot of artists have moved up there, and producers and studios.
Yes.
I feel like it's because when I moved there 22 years ago, it was just parents and maybe some commuters going in to do like Wall Street jobs.
Totally. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, the landscape has changed dramatically since I've been up here. I came up to this area in like 2018. And obviously, we know that the pandemic really shifted the way that a lot of people work and live, and especially people who are living and working in New York City. And yeah, you're seeing a lot more people involved in the music industry with space up here. And, I mean, I think I could say a lot about the kind of affordability crisis in this area. I won't go off on a tangent, but I think if you are like looking to have a barn or a studio space like our buddy has, I mean, it's just so much more doable here than renting in New York City and in the boroughs. So yeah, it's great to see such a strong community of artists and musicians here now.
Boy, I really admire your activism in that regard as well, though. The affordability of housing, it seems like it goes beyond that as well. But I mean, that's such great work that you're doing.
Thanks. Thank you.
And I feel like where we live with the O Positive Festival, and I feel like there is a level of activism that I don't like. I grew up in Texas, and I go back, nothing against Texas, but I'm in Dallas. I'm not seeing what you've got in the Kingston, New Paltz, Hudson Valley area.
Absolutely. I mean, that's one of the things that I love about this area is there's a really strong infrastructure of grassroots community-based organizations that run the spectrum from, music festivals, to your point, the music community of the local radio stations, Radio Woodstock, and then, yeah, I mean, emergency food pantries and, organizations providing mutual aid and, healthcare-based organizations and housing-based organizations. So Yeah, I think we are fortunate that we have that infrastructure, and I think it's only going to continue to grow.
Yeah. So I wonder for you if you could tell me a little bit about where it started. Like, was there, when you were a kid, was there an epiphany moment where you're like, oh my God, this is it. I'm going to be a singer in a rock band or whatever? Was there some version of that for you?
Uh, it's hard to distill it down. I grew up in a household. My father's a professional musician, and he has worked in music his entire life. I mean, from the age of 15 when he started playing gigs in the city, and then became really rooted in the New Jersey Shore local music scene, the Stone Pony. He was in many, many bands, Home, Cats on a Smooth Surface, and was just in that scene. And so growing up, when you have a father who is a working musician and you have a love of music that, starts to manifest through sitting next to a boombox and singing songs for hours and learning how to play guitar with him. And then him eventually like being a proud dad and like bringing you up to sing a couple songs when you're 5, 6, 7. Like
Ah,
it was just, yeah, it was just a part of my identity. And it wasn't until I would say like, I started performing in theater when I was around 10 or 11 years old. So theater was actually like my first avenue into the performing arts in like a formal way. Um, and then I was involved in a few different like put together girl pop band projects where I was a lead singer and a bass player. And that's really where the like pop rock space began. Um, but I think it was around that like age of 11, 12, 13 where I was like totally obsessed with Alanis Morissette and, all these other like starting to see women in music in a way that felt like, oh, I could do that too. But it was complicated, even from an early age. My involvement in the music industry was complicated. So even though I had this kind of like early life dabbling in music and working in music, I rejected it pretty much completely for a period when I went to college. Um, and it wasn't until I met Derek when I was working in education that I decided to like go back into it in the like as an artist. Um, and so yeah, it's a messy, convoluted story.
what was it that you think pulled you back into it? Did it feel less like some performative thing you were doing for someone else and more like some artistic thing you had to get out of yourself?
Um, I think I had spent time healing from my experience in the music industry
Ah,
a, as an adolescent, as a child, and as an adolescent. I always speak about my time. I was in a girl pop band called Ruby Blue, and and that was from like 13 to say 16 ish. And I always speak about that time as an invaluable time. I worked with some amazing writers and producers, Jeff Copeland in particular. And I was in the room writing with amazing people and performing and just learned so much about being in the studio and so much about being in a band. But there were a lot of, there was a lot of designing by the powers that be around what the music should sound like, what we should look like, what we should say, what we shouldn't say. Um, and I ultimately decided I didn't want a part of that. It was also juxtaposed with like my boyfriend at the time was very much in like the New Jersey hardcore punk scene. And so I was sort of seeing the like kind of poles of like what the music industry could be from this like very just like organic, authentic, seemingly like much more appealing to me version, and then this like very manufactured pop side. Um, And so it just, I kind of pulled away from it. And then I continued to work in the industry as a session singer. And I loved like the behind the scenes, not having to deal with the artist stuff. That was feeling like just a more comfortable space for me. But when I met Derek, when I met my bandmate, back to your question, I think the thing that attracted me most was just the relationship between the two of us. Like we had this completely random serendipitous meeting. But there was a spark between us, just one of those, like you can't really describe it. And then once we started working on music, once he started playing me some of the stuff that he was working on, it was really exciting to me. And it was unlike anything I had heard or worked on. And so I was like immediately drawn in by like the challenge of like, do I have a space in this band? Like, can I kind of like step up to this band and to this music? But I had some like major imposter shit going on initially, just being like, I can't do this. I'm not cut out for this. And yeah, I had some struggles with the music industry. It can be a really toxic place, especially for a young woman. But yeah, I think it was really just the chemistry between Derek and I, and like the love of what he was playing me that had that spark that drew me back in.
God, and you entered the music industry right as it was collapsing.
Yes. Well, yeah, it was an interesting time, like 2008, recession. I was actually teaching. I was working in New York City. I was a public school teacher, which I loved.
Wow.
I still work with kids, which is a big reason why I'm actually in the Hudson Valley. But yeah, it was a tough choice because it was stepping out of, a seemingly more secure space to go into the music industry. But we were really lucky. We found Mom and Pop Music, which is still our label, and Michael Goldstone. And how important it is just to find your people, find your allies. And especially for an indie band, like you don't have this huge team. So when you find your people, we had an amazing booking agent, Sam Kirby, and like I said, Goldie from Mom and Pop, and Jen Appel, who was still with us for press. And so we just we found the people that made it work for us and that believed in us, and we had our touring structure at that time was like me, Derek, and an iPod. We didn't tour with a drummer for a really long time. So we were like, we just made it work. But yeah, the music industry was definitely in a tumultuous time, and certainly still is.
So I love one thing you're describing is the idea of meeting Derek and not expecting what this to come into your life. And to me, it feels like it's like an object lesson in being sort of open to the universe and what the universe gives you, and then letting your sort of own intuition that this thing you didn't expect might be the thing that's the right thing for you. Lately, I've been teaching at a college in Manhattan. I teach songwriting, and the students will ask me, one of the things I really try to tell them is you have an idea of what you want, but the universe might just throw something else at you, and you have to be ready to say yes to things that you didn't expect. Or like even Mom and Pop, like maybe in your mind, you thought it was going to be whatever, Capitol Records, but here's Mom and Pop, and this is perfect for you. I just wonder, like, how much do you believe in / utilize your sort of intuition instinct?
All the time. Yes. And with regards to the origin of our band, it was 100% that. Derek had been touring and writing for Poison the Well for many years. He left Poison the Well, moved up from Florida purely on a whim to try and find somebody to collaborate with this new music on. He had been a hardcore kid and was feeling pretty boxed in by the genre, and was listening to a ton of dance music and, just all kinds of experimental electronic pop music that was really inspiring to him. And also just had this like deep love for, Cindy Lauper and Madonna. And so it's just kind of like had this like percolating vision of like, how do I mix like heavier guitar and instrumentation with this like pop sensibility that I love? And was like, well, I'm not doing it with Poison the Well. And that's like obviously no shade to Poison the Well. I love those guys. But yeah, him moving up to New York was completely on a whim. And me saying yes to getting his email address that night that we met was also just, it was a gut impulsive decision. And I probably make too many decisions in my life based on like gut and impulsivity. I'm very much like, if I'm feeling this, I'm going to do it. And if my body is like telling me fucking no way, can I curse on this?
Yeah, of course. As much as you want.
Okay. Okay. You know, if my body's like, no, absolutely not, then I'll say no to something. So, and that gut check has remained with our band, you know, this entire time. I mean, we are a small operation. So when Derek and I make decisions, like we have to be in alignment with our personal values. And, you know, if one person feels really uncomfortable, then the answer is always a no. But yeah, we're very much steered. Our ship has been steered by that, you know, just real check-in.
And I feel like that's got to come into the songwriting itself too, right? As you're making all the little micro decisions that make up each song, it's all instinct, right?
It's all instinct. It's all instinct.
Yeah.
And I think distilling the instinct from the rest of the noise gets harder and harder the longer you're in the industry. And what I mean by that is like when you first start making music together, it's more innocent. No one has heard it yet. No one has made judgments. No one's relying on an income because it's not your career yet, right? Like, and then once your band becomes something that is like sustaining your livelihood, and once people start listening to your music and you release it into the world, like it gets complicated, right? And the writing process becomes so informed by previous albums and perceptions of albums and previous experiences on tour and what songs you play for a crowd and like the room explodes versus the songs that you play that you maybe love deeply, but like, you know, don't move the room. And so I think it becomes complicated. And I think we're at a really good place right now where like we're able to just focus on the instinct and focus on like, does this feel right? Is this what makes us happy? This isn't necessarily for our fans or for our label or for anybody else in the room. Like this is for us. This is the music we want to be making right now in this moment. But I'd be lying if I said that like sometimes I can get really in my head about all those other factors, as I think any other creative person can who's making a living from their art.
It's funny, this comes up a lot in these conversations, the idea that you try to predict what your audience or what God forbid, the marketplace wants. And over and over again, we just kind of keeps coming back to this idea that calculation is the art killer.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because I feel like there's a whiff of desperation every time you try and figure out what to give them what they want. But that's good. It sounds like you guys have gotten beyond that.
I mean, we're fallible for sure. I think like I personally struggle with, you know, the role of like social media in music and, you know, streaming services and the algorithm and TikTok trends. Like there's always been things to consider, right? Like there's always been ways to be strategic about the music that you release into the world. But I think it's a confusing landscape now more than ever. And let's be honest, like being a working musician is challenging. And so like, I think there are some artists out there that are kind of like, they found this space where like they can kind of like, they don't even have to engage with the system. Like they've either like achieved a level where they can just be like, fuck it all. But I think most of us have to we have to sell the tickets. We have to find money to put the record out, you know? And so it's it's a lot to consider. But to your point, like, you can't let that color your creative process.
Yeah.
Or at least we haven't figured out a way to do it that doesn't compromise our music. And ultimately, if the music is compromised, I think in Derek and I's opinion, like, it's just not worth it.
Yeah. What's the point? Unless they're giving you $1 billion, and then we'll think about it. So you brought up earlier the idea of imposter syndrome, and that comes up a lot as well in these conversations. I wonder, when you come up against that or against some other sort of internally generated obstacle, something that, that your negative inner voice that keeps you from doing your best work or being your best self, what strategies have you come up, for getting beyond those obstacles? And I'm going to guess that climbing might be one of them.
I think imposter syndrome for me is rooted in my relationship with anxiety. And, I was diagnosed with anxiety back, I guess, 5 or 6 years ago at this point. And once I started kind of thinking strategically, or like, strategically sounds like the wrong word, more kind of intuitively about my anxiety and why I was feeling like an imposter, or why I was feeling so insecure, or why I was feeling like I needed to people please. Um, I've done a lot of work to like understand that. And I think some of it comes with age and wisdom and lived experience. But I think also some of it comes with just like kind of a radical acceptance of like who you are, and then therapy and, understanding the root cause of these, dysregulations that we have. And I think a big one for me is like the way that I perceive myself versus the way that others perceive me. And so I think I've just done a lot of work to like be more, to give myself more love and kindness and acceptance for who I am and what I can do. And yeah, I feel a lot less of that insecurity and imposter syndrome. But it took work.
Yeah.
It took a lot of growth.
I think it's so valuable.
But to your point, like,
go ahead. No, I think it's so valuable.
To your point, like,
this is our lag. This is the spectrum. Thanks a lot, AT&T. I'll just say, I think it's so valuable to hear you talk about this, because people they would look at you because you're such a confident front person. You're such a, you give such like, I don't know, lioness in whatever it is. Like, you're on stage seeming like you've never had a doubt in the world. And so I think it's really great to hear you talk about this stuff.
Thank you. Yeah. And I feel like I have been pretty vulnerable about the Alexis of Sleigh Bells on stage versus the Alexis in her private life. And, I'm really interested in this idea that like you can hold two seemingly opposing truths at once, or multiple like seemingly opposing contradictory truths at once. Like, a big fan of like the both and. And so I can both be feeling like I am going to shrivel up into a tiny ball on stage and run away, and still be like, a banshee and just like, making everybody in the room feel like they are on top of the world. Like, you can feel both of those things. And I think for me initially, being on stage was very much like a persona that I had to step into in order to have the courage to perform in Sleigh Bells. And now there's been a lot more integration with who I would say I am in my everyday life and who I am on stage. I feel much more confident and comfortable talking to people on stage as myself and connecting with them. And I feel like I can kind of take my guard down and be vulnerable in a way now that I couldn't in the beginning. And I think that's also because, like, when you play shows for as many years as we have, like, and especially the fans who stick with you, like, there's an intimacy there in that relationship. There's a trust And there's like a recognition of like, oh, we got each other's backs. Like you're here, you spent your hard-earned money, you drove 6 hours or however many hours to be at our show again. And like, and I see that and I respect that and I love that. And like, and it just feels so different than it did in the beginning, where maybe there were like some people just standing there at the barricade, like with their arms crossed, like being like, what are you all about? Right. So you were just kind of more on the defensive. Whereas now, there's just like a lot more warm and fuzzies
Yeah.
that I feel. And yeah, and I've let my guard down, but I've also like, to your point, like distraction, rock climbing, pursuing other interests, like definitely gives me some of that healing and space that I need to like be the fullest person that I can be.
I wonder, it seems like it must take some of the pressure off of you as a performer to be able to integrate more of your sort of real self into the stage version of yourself.
Absolutely. It's so much more fun.
They,
It's
I,
so
lo-
much.
I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I wonder if you'd be willing. There's so much great stuff in this, by the way, and I feel like we've only scratched the surface on so many of the things you do. Especially with your activism, and I feel like there's a lot we could talk about. But this is so great, and you've shared so much wisdom. I wonder if you'd be willing to distill a little bit of it. Imagine a 21-year-old Alexis in today's world. And now that I know you're a parent as well, this starts to become more of like a real exercise. What advice do you think you might give the 21-year-old version of you in today's world?
Yeah. I think the biggest piece of advice would be to care a lot less about what other people think of me. Um, to give myself credit. Um, I spend a lot of time, or I did used to spend a lot of time picking myself apart. I'd be really good at naming my flaws and my imperfections and my failures, but I didn't know how to just, even in a like a very sort of micro daily way, be like, wow, Alexis, like you should be really proud of yourself because you did this today, or you should give yourself some gratitude for this thing. Yeah, I mean, it's so much of it is just a perspective shift, but like giving myself a little bit more self love and not caring so much what people thought of me. Um, and I think it's interesting because so much of that turmoil was internal. Um, I think I had a really good way of like tricking people into being like, oh, she's really got her shit together. Like she seems. So I just think a little, and I think honestly, part of that was being in the music industry at such a young age, right? Because you are a professional, you are a child actor, you are a professional, you show up and you know how to turn it on. And so I think I was really good at like managing those sort of dual identities of being like, I've got my shit together, but inside I really need to do some work. Um, yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Well, this has been so great. And I'm really also glad to know a fellow lead singer in my little town. And I'm anticipating mini breakfast at our random local favorite hotspot. So thank you so much, Alexis. Thanks for joining me.
Oh my gosh, my pleasure. And yes, thank you for reaching out. It's an honor. And I'm a fan and love to be in conversation with other people. So thank you.